You can't stop me now. Can't stop me now. My feet have come too far for you to tie 'em to the ground. You can't stop me now. Can't stop me now. Set my sights on where I'm going at. Be turning back around.
Well, good evening and welcome to the Psychic Coffee Shop. I'm Aeson Knight, and tonight sitting in with us is Anna Papayoti. She's written a new book called Skyview Coaching. It's a really good book, but she's also been one that's not had the easiest situation. She's had some really hard blows. College best friend, stealing the boyfriend, loss of an infant child, a very much belittling and abusive husband, and she's came out of that, and now is helping others come out of that dark side, coming into more discovering the keys to unlocking within your best life in her new book. So how are you, Anne?
I'm doing great, Aeson. How are you? I love that intro and all the looks of Aeson.
It's where we've been on the show almost a decade now.
Yeah. That's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you. I started going back through our archives and just pulling out different looks of me and different co-hosts, because I've now had three co-hosts, 2.5, and just being on air, and we went from blog talk, now we went into video, now we're all over the place. All right, guys. So you have a co-author with this book. How did you two get to work on that?
Well, my co-author Tracy McDonald and I met at a coach training event, and we were just kind of magnetized to one another. I call her Sunshine, she calls me Sparkles, but we knew that we would end up collaborating one day together. It was just a feeling, and we both pursued it, and we started creating workshops and delivering content, because we both were so passionate about the power of perspective, which is what the book, The Gift of Shift, is about. But we did that first with the workshops. And then I kept after her, I said, we got to write a book. And she said, no. And I said, but come on, we can reach a wider audience faster. We can help more people help themselves. And she's like, no, I'm not a writer. But then one day she came back to me after being, I think she said she was at yoga and meditating on the mat. She got the message. It's time to write a book. And it is The Gift of Shift, which was the title of one of our workshops. So we still wouldn't have a book if she hadn't said yes, even though it's something I'd wanted to do for decades.
Right. So how was it working with a co-author? Like, did you take a section and she take a section, or were y'all Trelloing it and like, okay, well, I wrote this one about how to get rid of the bad boyfriend, you can write the next one?
It comes across that way because we do alternate personal stories in the book. So the book is a collection of short, sometimes intimate, personal stories, each designed to help the reader reflect on their own life and the common theme from that story, whether it's betrayal or courage or forgiveness or holding on to hope. We've all experienced these themes, but differently. And Tracy and I both believe in the power of the personal story, and that people will hear their truth in someone else's story and be required to tell their own, like the whole Me Too movement, right? So what we did was we rotated stories, we talked about themes, but and what would come out, just knowing one another's lives. And then it just fell together so beautifully. And after each story, we do ask the reader like 5 coaching questions so they can reflect on that theme, and then a place to even write their own story about that theme if they choose to. So it's a guided journal and a book and short stories and all of that for those reasons.
And, it's really easy to work through if you wanted to work through it like a guided journal and take like a story a week and work through those 5 questions and then bounce through that. Where did y'all two butt heads on?
Let me think about that. Butt heads. Okay. This would be the one thing that we struggled with was Tracy's very academic. She's an excellent facilitator, teacher.
Right.
And we had agreed on personal stories, and I've shared my personal stories for decades, but Tracy had not. She's a wonderful coach, but she never had to get personal with sharing about herself. leading separation and divorce support groups for 25 years and being a featured speaker for different things, especially regarding loss and transition and ultimately triumph, I was used to sharing my story. So I found we were writing two different books for a while. That hers was her stories, she just gave you a scratch of her personal and then went into teaching mode. And here I'm laying it out. And so we came back around and realized that I think we coached one another. And maybe I had to pull back a little bit on how much I shared. And Tracy had to open up a bit more and be more vulnerable and actually share to accomplish the goal that we were set out to do.
Very interesting. So with that, I'm sure you guys have tag team coached by now, to where you're doing like one seminar together. Do you find that you reaches more of the ones that are like sitting there with a notepad and pen and just writing every word you say, whereas you get them to set down the pen and actually pay attention?
Maybe, and we haven't done a lot of the book tour together at all. So I'm not sure. But when we did workshops, we were more academic with those. We did make it fun and we did tell stories, but not on this level. And so I think that it was what I think people do in general when it comes to self-help. A lot of books or teachers are over their heads. It's too academia, maybe,
Right.
And so that's something that I wanted to make sure we didn't do, and something that has always been important to me, just to make sure that people are listening and feeling and responding accordingly.
Yeah. It's because that's something I find a lot when I'm teaching is, they will get a gorgeous manual. They'll do all, they get all that material. And I'm like, now put that in when I was teaching in person, now I'm teaching virtually. I'm like, now put that in underneath your chair. Well, you can have that for after class. I want you in here and being active. And for me, that's really key. If, I've got a student that's just straight in the book and they're like writing the book and running to answer the question. And I'm like, where's your voice in this?
Yes.
So, and I love when I'm reading books and I can hear normally one, especially if they're co-written. When they're tri-written, it's a little harder, but you can hear like the voices. Like one is a louder voice, and yours was more louder in the book.
Was it? Okay.
When I imagined her sections of the book, they sounded very much softer speaking, and I'm like, okay, I can see the tag team here, the positive and the balance there.
Yeah.
So what is it, do you believe, when our inner voices, have that tend to like keep repeating or, popping out and there's betrayals going on and that inner voice repeats itself?
Yeah. I think that's something we all deal with, is that rumination and then self-criticism and judging, what was it about me that caused the betrayal? Like in my situation, I made her choices, their choices about me. And the lesson that I learned from it was what anybody says or does is about them. It's coming from their place of fear or insecurity or need or whatever it may be. And I just happened to be, in the wake of the destruction in certain time. And so once I learned that lesson, I was able to stop having that inner critical voice about that type of thing. But it's truly awareness. And I believe you got to be aware that that's what's happening, and then recognize that what happened and it's done. It's continuing to happen energetically if you keep thinking about it in that way. You keep criticizing yourself or judging yourself or holding yourself to some high standard. They've moved on, or life moved on. But keep experiencing the trauma in our energetically because we continue to think about it on some level.
Now, you still steadily practice as a relationship coach. How many relationships do you find that the arguments have nothing to do with the couple?
That's funny. That's
because I find it all the time. They'll call me going, I don't know why he's losing his shit over this. And I'm like, he's fighting his ex-wife. And they're like, what?
Exactly.
You guys are in a similar situation here.
Yeah, it's like people are so tangled in their past and they bring it into the moment. And so that's why I believe we have to untangle the past and heal our hearts so we can move forward whole. And but yeah, it's true. It's not the surface issue, is it? Never.
Very rarely is the argument about him leaving his muddy shoes in your kitchen. It's more about the whole dynamic around what those shoes mean, all that, and digging into that. And that's what comes out in coaching, because a lot of people don't know what coaching really is. I mean, we see, some professional coaches in the media. We see, like the Wayne Dyers, we see, some bigger names. When it gets to like interpersonal coaching, we don't see a lot of that. So what's normal in your sessions?
My sessions will start with really asking, the client how they want to use our time today. Because even if they came to me originally to help them through grief of a divorce or a relationship loss, their life's still happening. So something else will come up and they want to bring it. And I like to be organic and let it come out. But I'll start asking those questions, Aeson, as I'm sure you do, and to help them reveal what it is. And then, like the example with the muddy shoes, it's like, well, what do the muddy shoes represent? Like, how do you feel about them? I feel disrespected. Well, let's talk about disrespect and your relationship with disrespect, because I think everything's a relationship, and people have these relationships even with their emotions, right? And their feelings, and they're carrying them in, and then when we get to the truth, their partner wasn't, the intention behind their action wasn't to disrespect. It was, that's just what they always did, or what it's just a behavior. It wasn't, so the emotion behind it. In the last chapter in the book, The Gift of Beautiful, it talks about being yourself. And I talk about saying I do to you before you can say I do to somebody else. And when you do that, you can live true to yourself and not get pulled these different ways. I share that my current husband, I have an ex-husband, my current husband, I'm very grateful for. And I had we were aligned with all the big deal breaker issues. But all of a sudden there was, things that were building up, a mountain was building between us. And what it was were those things that people call irreconcilable differences and divorce over. But what I realized was that one of my strong values was being on time. And it's my husband. so when I get frustrated and I feel disrespected. So I took it very personally. His relationship with time, I took personally and made it about me and his intentions about me. And we had to get through that. And we did. But that's what a lot of people with their irreconcilable differences are, these misunderstandings about the intention behind it. And
what I find is a lot of it is just a different style. I am a paper planner. Everything is planned out. Everything is organized by Sunday night for what I've got to get covered this week. My one partner, he doesn't plan at all. He looks at the information stand to see when he has to go to work, and then he's off. My other one works in a digital system. And for me, it's like, I told you about an event 3 weeks ago. It's in our planners. It's on the board. And it's 8 o'clock. What do you mean you're not ready to go?
Yeah. My husband likes to get in the shower at the time we're supposed to walk out the door. And then I would be the one that felt like a lioness in a cage, pacing, waiting. And ultimately, to break this pattern, I said, well, what would respecting myself look like? And I said, well, I'm going to honor my value of being on time, and I'll let him be him. And I went to a wedding without him while he was napping, and he showed up at the reception looking like the groom left at the altar, because he's like, where'd you go? What happened? And I'm like, I came on time. It was important to me. And after that, we were able to have that conversation about, him stepping it up for more important things, and me relaxing for, say going to the movies. I just have to watch the preview like this.
Right. And, looking at it, And that's part of relationship negotiations. And I really wish that Cinderella, and I'm sorry, I think parents and Disney and everybody else pushes Cinderella too much into the children's programming. Um, because that happy ever after, oh no, that's after a negotiational contract and ideas and an explanation of values. There's a whole additional like 3 years worth of work before she gets to happy ever after. So I promise you, nobody
That's
comes trained for a relationship.
That's right. We gotta let go of that magical thinking. Do you find people fall into that? And then
Oh
their
yeah,
expectations are so high, so they're constantly disappointed and let down because they keep waiting on the magic, and
no,
that's not how it works.
it doesn't work that way. It has to be created. It has, even in magical class, we teach about, having to create and energize things. That happens in a relationship too. Um, And then there's the ending of a relationship, the dissolvement of the contract. And a lot of people grieve that. And that's where you really take off and do a lot of work with them. Whereas more as I'm like, okay, the next one's arriving in 6 months. Go get your hair done, your nails done. Let's get your career moving since you just escaped that crap. You work at them more, getting them ready for the next one. What are those steps like?
So honestly, it starts with helping people separate the business of divorce from the emotion, and
Mm-hmm.
so that they can make good business decisions, because that is it was a contract, and they're creating a new contract in a way, especially if they have children and divisions of property. So to help them, I help them step aside from the emotion, focus on the business, good decision making. And then what I find though is people still struggle to break up. The
Mm-hmm.
divorce comes, okay? The emotion has to be processed. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people will just woohoo, I'm out, because they wanted that, like I wanted
Right.
out of my marriage. But rather than taking the time to be still and reflect and learn something about themselves through that process and kind of reconnect. That's this whole soul CPR thing that I talk about, is you got to reconnect, revive your soul, because in a relationship that has ended devastatingly, or maybe the ending was what you wanted, but the relationship itself was devastating or had trauma in it, you've got to revive yourself and
Mm-hmm.
reconnect. And so I find some people just swim to the next thing, bam, keep going, and they don't learn the lesson that's for them, and they don't reconnect so that they can figure out the truth of who they are. And then the
Mm-hmm.
next decision, that next relationship that you can see, Aeson, is coming in 6 months. Not only are they ready for it, but they're ready to show up true to themselves,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll see the red flag early if the red flag's there. They'll have boundaries, they'll have confidence, and all of those things. That's my goal with helping people break up. It's to break up with the
Right.
emotion, let go of what needs to be let go of.
Mm-hmm.
And
And that's the better way of doing it. And the reason I say that is because I don't know how many clients I've got. We've been dating for 3 months. It's been fabulous and wonderful, and they just disappeared. And I'm like, yeah, they're trying to clean out their house and get rid of the ex-wife's shit so that you can come over for dinner.
yes, true. It is so true. Oh my
Uh-huh.
goodness. But yeah, relationships are, their life. And if we'll just take some time and really reflect and take responsibility for our role, and
Hmm.
not get caught up in that, magical thinking and waiting on somebody. My first marriage happened, I realized, because I was incomplete. And I hate that line in Jerry Maguire, you complete me, because, it just sets people up for not being whole on their own. And that's really where I was after the betrayal at university. I had that inner critic going, putting myself down, keeping myself down, not feeling lovable or worthy. And what did that attract? Bam.
Hmm.
Well, a victim has to have a rescuer, and a rescuer has to have a victim, and however you want to
Right.
label it to
Right.
people in places. And I set myself up for someone who just said the right things, filled me up, because there was an emptiness in me.
Hmm.
And that felt like love to me.
Hmm.
It felt like love, because here, my best friend and even my boyfriend, the two people I love the most in the world, I lost, and I lost them to one another. So what's that when it comes to love? And then here's this, someone telling me how wonderful I am and how stupid they thought he was, and
Right.
all of these things. And then that just built me up. I hadn't built myself up. Had I taken the time after that betrayal to really, really get to know myself and heal myself, then I know I would not have ended up in that marriage. I went on a date. But I
Now,
think that
how much were the two similar?
I'm sorry, say again?
How much was the college boyfriend and the first husband similar?
How were they similar? You know, that's interesting. I know that that would not have worked out, the college boyfriend. You know, I know that psychically, I know that intuitively. As far as how much they were alike, they were different, and yet they were both controlling.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I would say the similarity was. One was controlling for a very different reason, and the husband ended up being diagnosed narcissistic personality disorder because he wanted me to speak to the therapist, because that's what a narcissist does. They think they're above it and nobody gets it. And she told me to stay far, far away once I was out. And I do see that, and I see that a lot for people in relationships. But I would have never been in that relationship because I would have done this early on had I been whole. I would have never dated somebody like him before. And yet the high school boyfriend, I recognized there was the unhappiness in that relationship had always been about control.
Right. And feeling like you've been controlled and feeling like you've been stuck in certain situations. What I find is people tend to date the same type of person until they take time and go, this flavor doesn't work for me. It's like a pair of Reeboks. They don't work for me. I love a Nike shoe. They fit very well. But Reeboks will get that clearance on, like, those are cute. But I know Reebok men don't work for me. Reebok men and when I say Reebok men, what I mean about that is they're just repackaging me, trying to make me into whatever they want me to look, feel, that type of thing. That doesn't work for me. And, my partner Al, he very much supports what I'm doing, but it's like, you go do you. Yeah. We aren't going to tag team everything. I'll follow behind you. And I need that.
Yeah.
But it's part of that, looking at those relationships of our past and going, okay, what really didn't work? Yeah, there's betrayal there. We'll set that to the side. What else wasn't working? What was the underlying factors? And then making that, I am not dating someone that does X. Example, I can't date another psychic. Not interested in it. I'll never see them.
Yeah. Yeah. What I learned when I finally did stop and I call it floating, because one of the stories I share is that my dad taught me how to swim in a lake back home in Alabama. And I was so excited to learn how to swim. So I'd go on the other side of the rope and go to the platforms and stuff. But he insisted I learn how to float first. And I was impatient. No. And he's like, yes, we're going to float. Once you can float, well, I'll teach you how to swim. Because if not, if you just learn how to swim and you just keep swimming, you're going to wear out, give out, sink, and possibly drown. And what I realized, I believe for myself, is that I was a people pleaser, one. And that's how I ended up in the relationships with the girlfriends and the guy friends, And so it was one of these things that I had to learn to not be the rescuer. And I had to stop and float. And I had no idea how important that life lesson would be, my dad said, because I had just kept swimming, and I'd swim to the next boat, and that's when I get in the next relationship that had the traits. But what it was, it kept setting me up to I felt like it was my responsibility to make other people happy.
Right.
I would forsake myself in that. So once I did stop and float, which was after I got out of that marriage, ultimately, when you're floating, in water on your back, you can hear your breath in your ear, and you can hear your heartbeat, and you get this whole vast vision of the sky. You're just really reconnected to you. And that's when I said, okay, what is it about me that keeps attracting? Because even some of the girlfriends, they were controllers or whatever it was. And I was easily led because I was trying so hard to make sure they were happy. So I had to figure that out about myself and say, can I be honor myself, my heart energy, to when I say save people, to work with people. I was a lifeguard. I was a flight attendant. I'm trained to save lives. But one thing that you learn in lifeguard training is when to let go when they're pulling you under. And that was my greatest lesson, was learning when to let go.
What was your most 3 shocking changes when you got divorced?
3 shocking changes when I got divorced. Well, it's been a minute since I got divorced. I think it would be that I found confidence. That was one. I found this huge amount of confidence because I started focusing on me and what mattered to me and what built me up. And the more I did that, the more I could help others. I started leading the same support group that I'd been a participant in because they asked me to. And I felt, unqualified, all of that. And I said, I'm certainly not healed from this, even though I chose the divorce. They said, yes, you've got the skill set and you cannot help but help yourself when you help someone else. So I took that over when I was doing that. But I think I grew in confidence. I grew in maybe, I hate to call it risk-taking, but risk-taking because I found courage. It took courage to get out of an abusive relationship. And I know anyone who's listening who's in one or has been in one, that it's more than just wanting out. It really is doing so in spite of the fear, because often if it's an abusive relationship, and mine was emotionally abusive, the tactics that are used, the threats that are over your head, and you start believing it, and then you ruminate in that inner voice as well. Can't make it without me. No one will ever love you. All these voices, it's like, a bad movie that you just keep rewind and replay. And it will keep you stuck. So I think confidence and courage, that's 2. And the other I'd say is self-compassion, because I had to forgive myself because I was still beating myself up that I had ever stayed as long as I did. I had children in this marriage, and my first one had passed away, and the tragedy of that, and thinking, this child's life, was lost. And because I was married to this man, and all of these things, I now think of that differently, by the way. But I think it was a lot of self-compassion and ultimately forgiveness of self.
Did you think you failed?
I did in the beginning. In the beginning, I saw it as a failure, like another failure, because it was after the betrayal. I felt like I'd failed people then. I ended up dropping out of school after the betrayal. I kept swimming, okay? But I was doing a lot of self-sabotaging behaviors, over drinking, overeating, underperforming, underachieving. But when I finally, came up off the bottom, I didn't float. I just started swimming. So I went to a new school. I finished my degree. I got the job. But I was swimming with this broken place, and I swam right into the boat.
The next broken boat.
Climbed right in it. And because I didn't have the perspective to say, wait a minute, is that the right boat?
Right. And is that boat fitting to what I need? Is it a tanker or is it a battleship?
That's right.
That's, a lot of hardness here. Now, we got a lot of people dealing with grief, but we also have a lot of people dealing with FOMO.
Yeah.
And those two don't seem like they're connected, but I think they are connected. They're both fearing out that loss.
Yeah. And FOMO, for anyone who's listening who doesn't know the acronym of fear of missing out, it's the thief of JOMO, which is joy of missing out. And, for some people, there's a deeper issue, perhaps, Aeson, to overcome, like the fear of rejection or fear of abandonment. And it's past emotional trauma that I believe so strongly has to be healed. Otherwise, you'll carry that fear and that FOMO in, and maybe you show up and you never say no to anything because you don't want to miss out. However, ultimately, fear, it will hold you back and from your best life in some way. And while it will keep you from saying no to the things and the people you need to say no to, it'll have you say yes to the people and things that are not good for you. And with the pandemic, when that hit, I felt like we all kind of were in the same dance at the same time. FOMO, FOMO, you know, early 2 years ago now, it would be like, I get to stay home, you know? Or I have to stay home. I can't go to my gym or my favorite restaurant. So it was the same circumstance, but a choice of mindset and how you looked at it. And, you know, that fear can show up as anger and resistance, or it can show up as apathy and helplessness. But either way, fear. But joy is there if you choose. If you choose.
Right. Well, you know, we're dealing with a lot right now. What is her name? Brene Brown says that America in general is going through PTSD symptoms. Do you agree with that?
I would have to say yes. I would never disagree with Brene. Yeah, I mean, she does the research and then she puts it together and speaks it in a way that everyone can grasp it.
Exactly.
And so I do agree with that. I see it in my clients. I've led a support group for the Women's Center in Montreal, where I used to live. I'm now in the Dallas area, but because everything's virtual, I got to go back to Canada. And I led support groups for women in isolation. Like that. We created that to help people. The separation divorce, have a lot more people signing up. We almost started 2 sessions just because of the need, because a lot of people, you know, made these decisions, some out of fears, a necessity, some out of what I'm waiting for. But there was an upswing, even that I saw, that people are struggling. No doubt people are struggling. And the trauma of what's the change. And this is where we have to, when I work with people on change, like any change or perceived loss, you have to learn to let go of what was. That's that big lesson in letting go I was talking about that I learned as a lifeguard. But, and then we have to grieve what was supposed to be. I mean, think about these kids. I've got 2 in high school, one of my own and one that a young man that's living with us right now. But think about all these things that they missed out on that they always expected to happen in a high school experience. So you got to grieve what was supposed to be before you can really embrace what is. So this FOMO dance, you know, isn't instant, but eventually the more that you work on it and you practice it and you kind of see, how can I be happy now? And you really want to answer that question, then you start, I believe, with choosing gemma over FOMO, because it's love over fear.
Right. And, you know, learning over yourself, learning about yourself, finding out things. So what I found interesting, and I'm waiting for some research, or Brene or you or one of the other good writers to come out and write something about, was as soon as we hit the pandemic, we went through a fear response. And then right after that, we all started seeing this reanalyzation of people's lives. They took up gardening, they took up baking, they took up house planning. And then coming back out of it and expecting us to go right back to the grind, I was like, no, thank you. I learned 2 years ago, I don't need you. And if another employer will let me have the freedom to do what I need to do, then that's great, because I'll take them over you any day. And, you know, we've seen the great resignation, which I call the great rebirth. And we're seeing the largest amount of small businesses popping up in America and across the world. We're seeing the largest self-sustainingness kicking in, and people starting to take their health seriously. What do you think is being left out of this?
I love that people reconnected. You know, the ones that, you know, and I'll be honest, the first couple weeks of it was just a couple weeks, I think I got stuck in FOMO. But, you know, my butt cheeks were making imprints on my sofa, and I'm mindlessly eating Cheetos and M&Ms and, you know, Netflix news. And then I'm like, what am I doing? I got to do something different. And I did. I got up and said, I need structure. You know, I need to get up and I need to teach fitness class every morning. My gym's closed that I worked at. I'm going to do it online. Already did Zoom for clients. Why not teach fitness on? So people became creative in adapting when they wanted to feel differently. And like you said, all these people that chose the JOMO viewpoint were gardening and baking bread and sewing and getting outside and reconnecting with nature. And we saw so much healing individually and I think collectively during that time. But you still have people that got stuck in that resistance. And when we resist change, it's just going against the flow of life. Change is inevitable. Change is life. So now, like you're talking about the jobs, people really connected with where do I want to be in relationships? Like I said, divorce, upswing. Am I with the right person? Am I doing what I love? What about my career? Going back to school. I know one of my sons had applied for law school. They had a 40% upswing in application rate just because they were like, they gave up their jobs or lost their jobs and decided they're going to do what they really had always wanted to do. Now, coming back to work, what I'm seeing, Aeson, there's a company that I work with that I just put a proposal together for because I met with the HR director, and they've been at work. They've been at home for 2 years. They had no hybrid, solid at home, and now this particular company is requiring them to come back to the office full time.
That ain't going to happen to many of them.
Yeah, it's going to happen.
Very bad business decision.
Yes, I agree. So I'm working with them on a plan to engage the employees and work with them individually and let the employees speak and come up with something that's more viable because, like you said, people are like, they've taken ownership and they said, I'm not going to live that way any longer.
Right. And I'm not going to be on the grind, and I'm not going to have the phone in my hand and the computer while I'm trying to watch the boys' softball game. I'm going to be at the softball game.
That's right.
I can work at 2. I can do your proposal at 2 a.m. You can still have it on your desk by 8 a.m. in the morning.
That's right.
Doesn't mean you have to look at me.
That's right. That's right.
So
companies that are, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. What changes over this 2 years have you seen with your coaching clients?
With my clients specifically, I've really just seen that they have a more difficult time getting out of maybe victim and conflict mindsets. So just at the effect of life rather than at the cause of life. So maybe just a little, they're just more willing to come up front and say, I can't do this anymore. I can't. Well, speaking of Canada, so in Quebec, in Montreal, where I used to live, they had lockdowns, very severe lockdowns. They had police on the streets, curfews at 8 p.m. I mean, it got very, very tight, very controlled. And so some people were really struggling with their kind of mental fitness and mental health, so to speak. But it really just took, again, every change starts with awareness, being aware, wanting to feel different, working with what you have, not what you don't have, or focusing. I mean, the whole premise of positive psychology is not to deny that the bad exists, but to choose to focus on the good. Like you just rambled off a list of all these good things that have come out of this, right? So to focus on the good for yourself as an individual and for your community, for your relationships, it's there, but you have to choose to look up from that darkness to see it. And if you and that's where I think that I see I've had clients that just are stuck in helpless, hopeless, defeated, or angry that they don't have what they used to have, and so it's just more untangling to do.
Right. Yeah. So, got a question for you. Since you saw both views, the American and the Canadian, which country done it better?
Oh, are you going to read my mind right now?
No.
I appreciate both countries. There are differences between the two that I can look at and say, I see the difficulties, but I see the benefits of them. So I can't say that I like one more than the other, but I did love living in Canada the 14 years that I did. I embraced it. I made it home. It's where my children, for the most part, grew up. So I have a very soft heart for Canada.
Yeah. Well, I think Canada done it better, too, especially when they were like, oh, y'all guys can't go to work? Hey, you see that money over there? Yeah. Put that into their hands. Yeah, we have to keep you in at 8 o'clock, but our death toll is not as high as the ARS, and this is why we're doing this.
Yeah,
This is what we're doing.
that's right.
I say Canada pulled it off much better. I think that they handle, of course, I find them handling a lot more larger crises because they think more on a larger spectrum because they've got such a diverse population there. I mean, you've got the Inuits, you've got your English, your French, and then, like what, 20 other countries are like moved in to and have their own little communities there.
Oh, absolutely. And Quebec specifically, because it's French province, there's a lot of Haitian immigration because they speak the language. But I've met people from all around the world when I lived there, and it was just it was really a beautiful thing. I'd been told when I was moving from Atlanta, Georgia, to Montreal, I was working with a Canadian woman. She goes, Canadians are great, but they're going to be slower to warm up to you. They're not going to show up at your door with, a cake or pie when you first move in. And I said, okay, I can deal with that. But guess what? Somebody showed up at my door with cookies, I think it was, the first couple of days we were there. So we made fast friends, and I really respect the Canadian culture.
Definitely. I was there for just a week and and I don't know if it's a traffic law, if it was just the town I was in, but like the traffic, 3 lanes of traffic there, stop if you want to cross the road. And I was like, and I love the stance they took on the environment. Like everything's reusable, everything is minimal waste. And I'm like, okay, country is bigger than us, has more GDP than us, can do this.
No pesticides.
Yeah.
No pesticides. So you had weeds in your yard. So what? They were green.
Exactly.
But the water.
The markets. Oh my God, the food you guys get up there. Like this was like winter for you there that I was visiting. The grocery stores had all this fresh fruit, all this fresh vegetables, very little canned goods, very little processed stuff, and I'm like, something wrong here.
There's not 6 flavors of Oreos, and there's one, and so you don't know how that. And there wasn't fast food on every corner.
No,
I had to go out of my way.
Is better though.
Yeah, that's true. But I had to go out of my way to get to like a McDonald's or a fast food place. It wasn't just an easy stop on the way home.
Right. Yeah.
So fresh food. Yeah.
So what do you like living in Texas now?
So this was a change, and here's where I look for the blessings and the gifts, right? We moved the summer of 2019, so it was a job for my husband, and so for me, here I go again, FOMO JOMO dance. I have to just dance back and forth till I finally put FOMO in the corner. But I'm going to have to start over with my business. I'm thinking, because I had an office, I saw people live. I only had a couple of clients on virtually on Zoom. So I was gonna have to start over. So I'm doing my FOMO JOMO dance. But we got here and we settled in, and it wasn't 8 months before we're in a pandemic. And if we'd been in Canada, the borders closed, and I have one son in university at Auburn in Alabama. I would have been cut off from him, So I see at the time I kind of came kicking and screaming because I did not want to leave Montreal. And yet I knew I would one day, but I still had a kid in high school. And I just always envisioned finishing his secondary education there. But I see the blessing after. And I think that's with any change. You don't see the blessing in the moment. You'll see it later. But I think the fact that we got on this side of the border before all this and allowed us to be connected to family, because we had no family in Canada, even though we like family. There was a gift in the timing.
And do you think that pre-shift that you had to do with your business actually helped, like writing the book and getting other things going?
Absolutely. I think just that it was a goal I had. So we started the book in 2020 before the pandemic. So I had only been, resettled here for 6 months. I wanted to, so I'm going to focus on writing. I don't know people locally. Went back to gyms and got my fitness jobs. had some of my clients who were coming on Zoom, but my practice was not what it had been, certainly. So I really was pushing Tracy to write this book, and we got it in January of 2020 and finished it in May. So, you know, all this stuff was happening during then, but I think definitely I was set up on a path to have the time and the devotion and the focus to write the book.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
What was the moment you opened the door and walked out of it on your first marriage? Because I find that's the hardest moment for clients to move forward from, is when they open the door and walk out.
Yeah. So literally was in my driveway with my then 22-month-old son. And my ex was just one of these people who was, you know, sweated everything, all the small stuff was big stuff and anger issues. And he pulled up in the driveway. And anyway, he was yelling at me about something insignificant because I typed a letter. He asked me to type at my brother's house, and he was scared my brother would see what it was about. But I needed to go where somebody could watch my son. And I didn't have a computer back in those days. And I would have had to go to Kinko's or somewhere and pay to use computer time. And I had a 22-month-old. So I'd gone to my brother's, but he turned this into, you know, how dare I? And he's calling me every name in the book, and he's just screaming, which I'm numb to this behavior at this point. I get it, but I'm fairly numb to it. I had started, I think, a transition of just, I was out of my marriage, but I wasn't divorced. But my son stood there and he said, "No, Dada, no. Mama, Dada, bad." And it was that moment, literally, where I think being ready for change and opportunity, when they cross paths, you know, when those stars align and you jump. I talk about it was like being on a high dive. I'm scared of heights. I hate it, you know, but you can't get down the ladder. You're out there, you're shivering, you're scared to jump, but you can't stand to just stand there either. And then here's that moment where jumping, in spite of the fear, was exhilarating and frightening, because I told him, "You need to leave," in that moment. And it's just because my son, I think, was the motivator. What I had not been able to do for myself in that moment, I saw my son, 22 months old, you know, right from wrong, the one that wanted to go to law school, calling it out as it is. And this is, so it's time to dive. And I just did it. But now it's
always that I call it a quickening.
A quickening. I love it. Yeah.
You know, it's always a quickening when you do put your hand on that doorknob and finally open it out and walk out.
Yeah.
And then what's surprising to me, and this has occurred over a couple of, we'll call them divorces, you know, because we just got legal right to marriage 5 years ago, has been the people who come to me, or things that'll occur and it's no big deal to me. It's like Tuesday. Like, okay. And people are like, "How do you deal with that?" And I'm like, "They're acting like my ex-husband. I don't give a damn what. This is the information we needed out of that yelling match. Here's the 3 things you need to take care of."
No, I love it. Yeah. That I love your word quickening also. You know, I think that really is a good, you know, label for it. But walking out the door, sometimes that's when I say people don't always know how to break up. They get out, maybe they get the divorce, or they walk out, they leave, or they get the other one to leave, but they still don't know how to break up. And I struggled with that. And it wasn't because I was it wasn't because I was in love. It wasn't about love. It was not fear. And that fear kept me allowing him to control me a bit and to dictate, you know, how I worked through the divorce. And it took a while. It's not easy, especially if it's an abusive relationship, to walking out the door is only the first step. You got to keep walking. You got to keep walking. Keep walking.
And deal with that withdrawal, because there's a hormone withdrawal that occurs. I don't care how bad that relationship is, how dangerous that relationship is. There's an emotional withdrawal. That's why it takes, I think I heard somewhere, it takes 7 times for an abused woman or an abused man to leave a relationship and stay out.
Yes, and that's a true statistic. It's an average of 7 times they leave and go back, leave and go back. That pull is there. Or,
Mhm.
you know, they come back and they apologize, right?
Mhm.
And they can't live without you. And you feel what I said earlier, the responsibility for their happiness. This is why
Mhm.
people have to reconnect to themselves and recognize that you're responsible for you, for your life, and
Mhm.
to others, not for them. Two very different positions, for and to. When you can get that clarity and be responsible for yourself and to others, I was responsible to communicate to him that we're done. This is not something you can come court me back with earrings and a Mediterranean cruise, which was something he tried to do. And like this, you suddenly have this realization, no, that's not it. And so I had to learn to communicate, to be honest, to allow him his own consequences. And
Mhm.
then the manipulative person then may
Mhm.
threaten suicide. And that's hard on somebody that's a hard energy, that's a people pleaser, that
Mhm.
carries the burden for other people's happiness. And that's why it's important to heal that, get to know who you are, learn the art of letting that go and working through it. You're going to feel it in that moment when they threaten something, but
Mhm.
then you come back from the emotion into the logical, rational side of your brain and
Yeah.
say, I'm responsible for me.
So earrings and a Mediterranean cruise.
Yeah.
He must have really upped the ante because the normal is like the grocery store roses and, oh honey, let's go out on a date and rediscover. So that's their new, what I call the new narcissistic word is rediscover the relationship. And it's like, you
Mm,
can't rediscover something that is as dead as the mummy in the tomb.
that's true. Yeah, mine was even after the divorce, still trying to say, well, that just means we can start over now.
Uh-huh.
No.
No, no, no. So what's your best advice to someone that's keeping their eye on the door? Like they haven't stepped to it yet, but they're just considering their door.
Okay. That's where I was for probably 2 years. I kept looking at the door, like I said, being ready. I was getting myself ready. I would say touch base, pay attention to what has a grip on your heart. Okay. What has a grip on your heart? You'll know what's pulling you to stay or pulling you to go. Listen to it
Mhm.
and connect to it, because it's trying to get you where you need to be or away from what you need to get away from. And I think that people ignore or don't trust themselves. They don't trust their intuition or their higher consciousness or whatever you want to call it, but they don't trust themselves. And so I think it's really start working on paying attention to life, noticing what has a grip on your heart, listening to
Mhm.
that higher voice, that greater wisdom. It's there, it's yours, it's in you. And then having that readiness, because when opportunity happens and maybe the quickening, there you go. But there's usually a trigger. I think there's usually a trigger of the pain I'm in is greater than the fear of what I don't know or the uncertainty or the change. Yeah. So as soon as I decide that and if you've numbed yourself to it, which I
Mhm.
see a lot of people do, if you've numbed yourself, you're not feeling how painful it is. And that's why we need to feel what we feel and notice that we're numbing it no matter what our numbing agent of choice is, whether it's alcohol or shopping or, what have you. We're not healing it and we're not allowing it to reveal to us
Mhm.
what
What-
what we need to learn. Yeah.
Yeah, what you really need. My advice is always start saving a little in an account that
Oh
doesn't
yeah.
exist. You know, five
Yeah.
dollars on the grocery bill every week. You guys would be surprised how much coffee jar money and Starbucks money can give you to get out.
That's right. That on the proud side of advice, absolutely. I tell people to start getting their finances in order and knowing their finances. I find a lot of women in particularly have
Mhm.
turned over the finances of the relationship to the
Mhm.
to the spouse. And then they have no interest in it, and they're trusting, right? And then they don't know what they have and what's at risk. And I see a lot of regret in people not getting what was rightfully theirs. So start gathering information, inform yourself, go to the bank, find out, snoop even, are there credit card bills that you don't have that credit card? Why do you not have that credit card number? Start paying attention. It really is noticing and informing yourself.
And it's not just women, it's men too. And just people, and I'll give you a great example. Nurses right now, I'll guarantee you guys have handed over those paychecks in this pandemic and say, just pay the bills. I've got 16-hour shifts for the next 3 weeks. I don't have time. Here's the paycheck. And you expect and you get used to that behavior. And we were raised, or many of us were raised in a family where one member dealt with the money. It was either mom who gave dad an allowance, or it was dad who brought home the paycheck and shopped for the bacon, and mom didn't worry about it. You have to get educated in your own finances. That's right. And what you have, because if your name is on that account is yours too.
That's right. Know your rights. And even just go to an attorney for a consultation. And find out your rights. This is the business side. I was talking about business versus emotion. And don't let the lawyer be your therapist. They're not, or your coach or psychic. They're not, and they're going to bill you by the minute. So it's really about speaking in, bullet points and facts and bringing what you have and letting them help you understand what else you need to be putting together and what your rights are and what their expectation would be of how a divorce would go considering your circumstances. So go for a consultation.
Yeah. Have your shopping time in Walmart can be Hades that day.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. I tell sometimes you have to become an actor or an actress. Even to trick yourself out of the emotion to start moving forward, and you can't let on. I say, and one mistake I see people doing is telling their partner what they're doing because they're used to communicating even, and they're used to sharing, and they're angry. So it's like, well, I've been looking into our finances. And I'm like, no, you got to keep this back pocket for now. You got to, it's a strategy at the end of the day, especially when you're having to get out in such a way. I mean, there's this thing called collaborative divorce now. Well, that's great when everybody agrees, it's just not working out. Let's split up. Let's be fair. Let's just, have someone mediate it. And that's wonderful. But I don't find that is the usual.
Right. What I find a lot of times is people, when we get into the divorce, especially people pleasers, they don't ask for what's really theirs.
Yeah. They're scared. They're asking for too much. Yeah. And I lead a support group Monday nights. Yeah. And it's interesting to watch people go from like in the first week we start until by week 8, where they're at in a different mindset about how they're going to deal with the business, because they've started processing some of the emotion separately. They're recognizing they are responsible for themselves and they did deserve this and they are worthy of that. And this was a partnership. And like any partnership, this is how. But a lot of people, they just want out and they're like, just give it up. Or I don't want to upset him. I'm like, what, are you going for best ex ever award? That's not going to.
Not only that, but especially if they've been homemakers or they've been staying home to raise the children, or they're the lesser earners. They get this program in their mind that the guy that works 120 hours a week and is a fucking alcoholic when he comes home owns everything.
Yeah. Yeah. They so again, it's how do you value yourself, right? How do you value yourself? And I remember reading some report where someone came up with an annual salary for what the stay-at-home parent is worth. And it was pretty, it was like $168K. I'm like, bravo, because you're the chauffeur, you're the housekeeper, you're the you know, all these things, and they added all that up, and so that's about 168K a year value. And I'm like, yeah, people value yourself, and yeah, absolutely.
All right, so how do people get a hold of you if they want to work with you as a coach, and how do they get a copy of the book?
All right, so my website is Skyview Coaching. Remember, floating, you're looking at the sky. So skyviewcoaching.com, and you can connect with me there. I have my email, my phone number, everything's there. I'd love to hear from you. You can sign up for my newsletter there, News and Views. And also the book, The Gift of Shift, it's there. It'll click you straight into Amazon, I believe it is. But the book is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all the major online booksellers. But you can also, if you want to support your local bookstore, ask them to order it for you from the Ingram Sparks catalog.
Yes. And do you have another one coming out soon?
I am hoping to. So I am working on something. You're going to love this title, Aeson. The universe is my travel agent. That's my book. That's my solo book. And then I've been asked to write a divorce guide for 20 some odd years. So it's in my vision.
Cool. I think the divorce guide is very much needed, but I think that you need the after divorce guide too. Like if you write the first one, you can't take them to the cliff. Kick them off. You got to give them a parachute to land in the pool.
All right. I hear you. I like that.
Okay. All right, honey. Well, thank you for coming and having coffee with me and having a good conversation. Guys, go get The Gift of Shifting, and also go check out Skyview Coaching. And if you're in the Houston, Dallas area, definitely connect with her if you're looking for a local coach. She does have limited availability, but I'm quite sure she would have availability for. Are you back to in person?
I am back in person some, but still the most of my clients are virtual, and from anywhere, even local Dallas area, are mostly everybody's kind of, they've just found that comfort and ease with it now, and I think that that's what people are gravitating towards.
Very much so. All right. So it doesn't matter. And, she's not going to be ending her virtual. So if you're anywhere, you can get in contact with her. Do you speak French also?
No. Un peu, monsieur.
Okay.
No.
So you do have to be English speaking, like you have to do if you work with me. I don't speak any other languages that are common. So, yeah. All right, guys. Let's take a sip, and then we'll cover some hot topics.
Awesome.
Where is it? All right. Hello, Joe. How are you?
I'm doing good. How about you?
Oh, pretty good. I see you changed your camera angle finally.
Yeah, everyone's got a different angle of me now, so we'll see how that goes. No, it had been like up on my desk, like literally where my hand is, like that's how much it moved.
Wow.
A few inches there. So yeah. But no, it was in the way of my monitor. It was this constant juggle to like get it like go down, like not there. I can't see to click around you, like it had to go. But hey Brenda, hey Kathy, and I believe Shannon.
Hello, Miss Shannon.
I believe it's
really good book, really good things. I loved having a good conversation with her. You guys are going to be getting some more conversation, because I will also, you're going to start getting some episodes that are just interviews, but that's not going to be, it's Psychic Coffee Shop special.
Hey, awesome. Very awesome.
Yeah, because we've launched that, our demand from authors and international authors. Some of them are really hard because this is like 3 a.m. for them. So yeah, we love having our authors on, so it'll be great. All right, some other new things you might notice is down in the banner. If you want to buy us coffee, Cash App is right there. You can buy us coffee. I take a double mocha latte. He takes a chai tea, just so that you know what to order from the Cash App.
Well, you're that, or like now if we're going by Starbucks orders, like that's a venti caramel macchiato quad, but your order doesn't really change, but
it does not. It goes It's really like the shift that has occurred with me is really weird. Like I'm drinking mocha now almost all the time. Like I
Yeah,
love my
you're one of
coffees a
those.
lot, but I'm really much into espresso right now.
There you go. There you go.
Mhm.
Yeah, I've been hitting the chais a lot harder. So, and
You
speaking
you have,
of,
and that's been doing well for you because it was getting a little hard. Although I will say you tend to like go after brands that die.
yeah, I know, right? Like, I honestly, I think companies need a warning for me that, like, this is not your customer. Um, just because I
I,
am. It's like Joe likes it. He really likes it. Death.
I,
Like that's it.
Yeah. That's actually really good. However, companies, if you're wanting to kill a brand, send it to Joe. It'll take care of itself.
Like if I like it though, if I like
Yeah.
it, like not that I'm like without my like faults there. Like if
Hmm.
I don't like something, it tends to take off. Like I really thought texting was like a really stupid idea in the beginning.
Uh-huh.
Granted, that was on like standard numeric phone keypads, like
Hmm.
way back when.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, that's stupid. No one's gonna do that. Like that's a fad. That's a fad. Then they gave us phones with full keyboards, and I went, oh, see, now that I'll do.
Yeah. And you'll do
Like,
that preferably.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay, so let's cover some news.
absolutely.
All right, let's talk about, do we call it Facebook? Do we call it, Meta? What is this that they're being locked out?
I don't know, the social media formerly known as Facebook.
Yeah.
So users complain Protect security feature has locked them out. So this is a security feature from Facebook slash Meta. Is now the target of complaints from some users who say they were locked out on Friday and unable to access their accounts. So this would be last show back on Mountain Bears that day. So yeah, so Facebook Protect is a security program used by Facebook's parent company, Meta. The program is designed for people who Facebook perceives to be more at risk of being targeted by hackers, such as human rights defenders, journalists, and government officials, among others. So Facebook sent an email earlier this year and warned users that their accounts required this, and sent it from an email address that a lot of people ignored
Mm-hmm.
because it didn't look legit, which was security@facebookmail.com.
Mm-hmm.
And warned that, it had to be turned on by tomorrow, the 17th of March. And after that, you'll be locked out of your account until you enable it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, some problems have arisen.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, the system is not working right to enable. So a lot of like journalists and such are currently locked out of their Facebook accounts
Right.
because they cannot complete the process
Right.
to get their account enabled for this protection. So it's
Mm-hmm.
protecting it really well, except
Mm-hmm.
so a Philippines-based journalist who tweeted that he had already enabled Facebook Protect, two-factor authentication, and backup codes, which is awesome. You did everything you were supposed to do. That's amazing. Said his account was compromised, and someone began posting libelous comments under his verified name.
Mm-hmm.
Holy crap, Meta. Get your shit together.
Mm-hmm. And get it together quickly. Because I got a message earlier that one of my backup accounts has had an issue, and I'm going to have to go and address it later. Someone's
Yeah.
apparently gotten a backup number.
Yeah, and if you've missed us talking about this previously, because I did have a client pop up with this, and it was the first time for that. I will say it was the first time for it. Please don't use Facebook with a VPN.
Yes.
Please, 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 please. Even if your antivirus security software that you trust talks you into paying for a VPN,
Mm-hmm.
please turn that off before you try to go to Facebook. And there's probably many other services that aren't going to react well either.
Right.
But Facebook especially will put you into probably about the same verification loop. I literally had to walk or help a client.
Right.
Like, it wasn't walk through at that point. It was such a convoluted mess. To scan their driver's license and get it in a format that Facebook was happy with and a file size Facebook was happy with, like on and on and on. Because it's a very follow the directions explicitly.
Right.
And then they forget to tell you like exactly what to scan it at.
Right.
Like, because if you scan it too detailed, too high of a resolution, it won't accept it because the file size is too big. If you don't scan it high enough, they won't accept it because, like, it's unclear. So yeah, it was a whole nightmare that fundamentally was because their antivirus software had told them about the horrors of hackers.
Right.
And while selling a VPN service,
right,
to protect them.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, what that ended up doing was that VPN service was bouncing them all around the country in terms of where it said they were. Because when you use that VPN, you're connecting to a service, and that service drops you out onto the internet, like in the middle of an Iowa cornfield.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be okay if you're consistently there.
Mm-hmm.
When you're popping up all over the place, you know,
Right.
you're in DC one moment, New York the next, and etc. Yeah, Facebook doesn't take well to that.
No, they don't like that at all. We've had this
No.
so when we're working with clients, I was like, no, we need to be
Well,
assigned.
not that they've ever had a great reputation over time.
Mm-hmm.
Or like when you get, like, if someone, you know, hacks your account and you lose your account,
Mm-hmm.
there's problems. Like, Facebook's never been able to handle that well.
Mm-hmm.
Scraped accounts, they still have issues with.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's a lot of things going on there.
Right.
It's
a thing.
Oh my God.
Right.
Like, again, Facebook and security. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and the irony is you can set up your whole existence on Facebook.
Right.
Never need your driver's license, never need, you know, any of the forms of verification that they offer to let you use to prove you are who you say you are when you're locked out.
Mm-hmm.
None of this did you have to provide in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And I still argue that one. I'm like, well, but wait a minute.
Mm-hmm.
What did we just prove?
Right.
Like, hi. Oh, and you've got questions coming in.
I do. And we've got some hot topics to cover, but let's take this question. Hello,
All right.
Madison. How are you, darling?
Yeah, so Madison Gross, 12/15/2001. Is Ryan playing games with me? I don't think he knows what he wants.
Let's take a look here and see what he is going on. I don't think he's playing games. I also don't think that he's totally sure that he can get what he wants. That's a difference than playing games and not knowing what you want. It's more of a self-image thing and him being fearful of hurting not only you, but the relationship, because he's been repeatedly told he sucks in relationships. So with that, I want you to take your time with this and take a breath. Let him come forward. He'll get himself together in a comfortable position. Okay?
All right. So, yeah. So, one article down.
Mhm.
Oh, and then we have more coming in. Oh, fun. Sorry, I just saw you drop me more articles. Like, I thought I had everything open and ready to go, and I'm like, no, there's more.
There's always more, because we go to the top of the minute.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Oh, I see what I've done.
Now you're looking at the camera.
Okay, sorry.
You haven't been looking at the camera, and you've had half the camera blocked.
Sorry, I didn't see the cable. I really didn't.
Yeah, so
I'm
stop
still
making us feel
working.
like we're short and just tilt it up a little.
Like, I can't.
Yes, you
Like,
can. There you go. Now we don't look like we're
alright.
short.
Well, now I feel like an Oompa Loompa. Hold on. We're coming back down just a hair.
Okay.
Like, I was feeling very Oompa Loompa there.
Well, we were feeling very Oompa Loompa sitting in a small chair. Which, by the way,
well,
I
it's a
guess,
small world after all. Okay, so and Disney, don't even think about it.
don't even think about it. We own
don't even.
the copyright because us gay men took care of it beforehand.
You know, right?
Yeah.
And Brenda's like, nah, that's my normal view. I'm sorry.
We will get your camera sorted out to where it works for you for shows, even if we got to teleport it in for half the show.
Hey, there we go.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there's been a few things going on. Now, I do want to touch back on a hot topic before we go there. We saw this week here from TMZ, which I only trust them for gossip. Wendy Williams traveling from New Jersey back to Miami, and a viewer talked to her, and she basically said the same thing she said on ABC. But the pictures are out, and she looks good. Like, she looks like Wendy traveling. They did make note that Kevin Jr. is with her. Of course, Kevin Jr. is going to be with her because it's his son, his mother, and he's being introduced into the business guys. But the thing here that they keep trying to comment on is about when she was seen in a wheelchair. Now, we all know Wendy Williams has lymphedema. And with lymphedema, it does make you a little unsteady on your feet. I don't have lymphedema. I have RA, and I carry a cane. And there's been times that I've grabbed Joe during an event or when I'm walking a lot and just had him lead me to get me through things. So I'm like, we're back to the normal Wendy. Now
now wasn't that right at the end of her having COVID too?
Well, yeah, recovering from COVID, and they've made a big deal out of her being seen in a wheelchair.
Yeah, I'm just going COVID plus lymphedema. I don't think that goes well.
No.
Because if I remember right, isn't lymphedema mostly circulatory in nature? So if she got knocked out for COVID, like as everyone did, like, what I mean? Like,
and she has Graves' disease.
You're going to be in bed a lot.
Yeah, you're going to be in bed a lot. Lymphedema is going to swell your legs a lot. You're going to have to, with lymphedema, you have to move. The involuntary system no longer drains.
Right. So, yeah, if she ended up having to be like, okay, I'm going to bed. Like, thank you. Have a nice day.
Yep.
I'm going to bed. Then, yeah.
Right.
That's what that would look like. And that's not a illegitimate thing. That's
right. Fine. But no, they're trying to make this big news story over her flying from New Jersey back to Miami. Yeah, Wendy's back in business. Like, the switch is not 100%, but it's at 80, as she said on ABC, Good Morning America. So I think we're going to start getting more from Wendy. I think we're also going to see more of Wendy on her own social media. Like, I think that was a good move. A lot of people are going, oh, that was a bad move. No, get your control of your social media. Get your control of your fan base, because Wendy can walk into ABC, she can walk into Sirius FM. She's got a name and followers like no other. I mean, she's beat out everybody in ratings. And I find it interesting that Maury, which normally here follows Wendy, is retiring this year.
Really?
Really?
Huh.
Finally? How interesting.
Finally?
Yeah. I guess he's done all his DNA test.
I mean, what the hell? Like, I know he's got to be sitting there at this point, though, being like, I swear to God, we have done this story.
Right.
I swear to God, we have had these guests.
Yeah.
Like, did anyone double check? Like, what does he have left? What? And now, granted, daytime television, it's not like it's a Barbara Walters interview. Like, these aren't really hard-hitting topics. But, like, there is a point there that, like, Maury was kind of, and other talk show hosts, too, were really great because they were exposing people to things that, like, okay, this is different.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe it's fucked up, maybe it's not. That's debatable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, their situations. This is the world. It's you know, it's not all, you know, Dick and Jane novels. You know, like, that's not it. It's not happily ever after. Like, shit happens.
Right.
You know, not everyone is 5'6" and 6'8" and, like, you know, the perfect
Mm-hmm.
couple.
Uh-huh.
Like, that's not how that works. Like, you know.
Right. And you probably realize that, you know, he's now DNA testing the kids. He already DNA tested to determine his parentingship on their kids, you know, because he's 83 years old.
I know.
83.
Well, he's not doing bad for his age. I will say that. But I mean, is there a moment there though? Have they seen, like, I don't know if he wants to go for like a Guinness record on this one, but I'm wondering if there's like layers of the, like, you are not the father. Like, how many times in like one,
Right.
like, family?
Well, I want to see how close he is to Larry King.
Oh, he's younger than King.
I know he's younger than King, but I want to know how
Okay.
long Larry King was on air.
Oh God, Larry King, I think, was born in the middle of a commercial break, and I mean, just like wipe the baby goo off and just like, and we're back from commercial.
Uh-huh. From 57 to 2020. See, he passed in 21. He was born in 33, and he started broadcasting in 57.
Yeah. So 65 years?
65 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 31's not bad comparatively. I mean, that would be like average.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and you have another question coming in.
Awesome. Hello, Joan Darling. How are you? Can I have also the adult daughter's first name?
All right. And Joan, 12/28/66. I'm having a problem with my adult daughter. Any insight, please, and thank you. So we're just waiting on that daughter's name.
Right. Give it a few seconds there while I get the cards.
Oh yeah. We got a delay. We know there's
We have a
delay.
30-second delay.
Brittany.
There we go. Brittany.
Marsha. No, Brittany.
Okay, so yeah, you're having some problems because you're trying to be the advisor and the fixer. Those are problematic. She's got some jealousy going here with that sun card popping up. She thinks you get more light than she does. Whatever this has to do, don't be feeding into the money aspect of it. However, let her go learn her hard lesson. Okay? So yeah, those lessons are hard. Sometimes you can't fix adult children because they're worse than 2-year-olds. And you have to let them fall down, scrape their knee, and apologize. So I think you're looking at probably about a month and a half to 2 to where she comes back and goes, Mama, I'm sorry. I was an idiot.
All right.
All right. So, which do we want to tackle first?
Ooh. I don't know. We've got a few going on. We have gas thieves, we have Google Maps, we have FBI concerns, and Microsoft.
Well, let's go to Google Map because this one was really interesting within the current switch I'm in.
Yes. So on Friday, again, while we were on our show day, so eventually coming back up at 3 in the afternoon. But yeah, Google Maps went down on Friday, March 18th for some users, making it difficult to find directions for driving, walking, biking, and modes of transportation. So a Google spokesperson confirmed the outage with an email statement that explained, we're seeing reports of difficulties accessing some Google Maps and Google Maps platform services. Our team is investigating and working to resolve the issue as quickly as possible.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, they had a massive spike in reports. starting around 10 a.m., probably a little closer to 10:30, looking at this graph, maybe 11
Right.
on Friday. So it looks like they were total downtime of like 4 hours. But it did start out, because I love the title of this article, and that's what I'm coming back to now. Google Maps is down, but no one wants to use Apple Maps. We're all lost without Google Maps. So I find it kind of funny. A lot of companies, and Google especially, ends up taking a lot of flack when their major company service goes down. No. Everyone's just like, fucking fix it. And
Well, this is my question. How many people didn't make it to work on Friday because they didn't know how to get there? There's probably some poor, unfortunate soul still bubbling around in Beckley trying to find the Krogers.
Possibly. But yeah, so there were a lot of great comments, starting with, I am legitimately stunned that Google Maps is apparently down. Good thing I know where I'm going, or I'd have to use Apple Maps and be like Magellan. I think Google Maps is down, so out of desperation, for the first time in my life, I had to open Apple Maps. Let's see. Google Maps being down is a good way to learn that Apple Maps is still terrible.
Right.
In the past hour, we have learned that our navigation preferences are as follows. 1, Google Maps when it isn't broken. 2, guess and check. 3, loading up Google Maps to see if it's still broken. Asking someone. And number 5, Apple Maps. Even when Google Maps is down and isn't working, it's still better than Apple Maps.
See, but what I find interesting here, and this is just highly me going, but. There is other systems out there. There's MapQuest that no one brought into the debate. There's Yahoo Maps that no one brought into the debate.
Like, I don't know if you're going from, like, worse to, like, not quite as bad on that. Like, MapQuest, really? Like, someone hasn't just bought that domain and pointed it to, like, Apple Maps.
But I am kind of thankful that it happened Friday, because that meant you weren't on the road and I don't have to send out a search party.
True. Oh my God, it still works.
Yes.
Holy crap, that's a lot of ads.
Yeah, it's totally supported.
I know, but like, do they have an app?
Yes.
Ew. No. Sorry, ew. Like, there's flashbacks. I mean, what did you expect people to do, honey? Load up their, like, early 2000s laptop with Google Maps and, go for a drive?
No, I expected them to reach in the glove box and pull out the map of West Virginia and try to find their ass.
No, that's how you die in West Virginia.
Not really.
Yeah, basically.
That's where you find some of the best restaurants at.
No.
Because you got to not everyone's thought.
Sweetie, not everyone's looking for the nearest omelet shop, Waffle House, or Denny's, and no, that's not the way most people find food.
Baloney. If anyone has gotten my Oldsmobile Eclipse or the Buick, they have maps of the whole Eastern Seaboard with some of the best restaurants with reviews on them.
No, they threw that out. Sorry. Like, that was like, ain't nobody got time for that shit. I mean, come on. Like, I literally had a moment buying it, like 2016 to now. Here's what happened. 2016, I thought it would be really awesome to have a car with a navigation system. Like, prior to that, I thought, oh, that would be amazing. And then I bought the car with the navigation system. Let me tell you right now, no, it is not cool to have a car with a navigation system. Nobody needs that. but you need the big ass screen, let me tell you. Because it plugs right into my phone. And that's where Google Maps goes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that has been the worst part of my car being down. I swear to God. Like, I'm so useless in my car now, or like in, when I'm driving now. Like, when I'm out, I can't do shit. I have nothing. Like, do you understand? Like, I can't reply to text messages. I
Yeah.
have to scream at that son of a bitch to get him to even think about dialing a phone number.
Uh-huh.
I like everything I go to do. I'm just like, oh my God, it's 2000. I need a payphone. That's where I'm at. It's like, I might as well. Like, I should have just dropped a can with a shit ton of string when I left here, and just that would work better.
I'm
Because
surprised I haven't gotten calls from you when I've sent you to Kroger's with, can you tell me how to get there?
no, I'm good with that. Oh yeah, Waze worked better than the nav system on my aunt's caddy SUV that had us looking at a gravel road heading through the woods to get to a hospital in Pennsylvania. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because you also have to realize, like, here's the hidden problem with onboard navigation. Those systems require updates,
Mm-hmm.
and some of that has to do with satellite drift.
Mm-hmm.
Because they, like, unless you get that update,
Mm-hmm.
while they're doing that, that's what I've figured out is they're also going, like, you're not just paying for the map update.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's a process. They don't just hand you the SD card that goes into the little slot on your dash.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's a service charge. They take it in the back.
Mm-hmm.
But when they're doing that,
Mm-hmm.
they're also, I think, recalibrating the GPS system
Mm-hmm.
itself,
Mm-hmm.
with information about, like, satellite drift. Because unless you realize that's happening,
Mm-hmm.
that can really throw a navigation system off.
Right, and you do realize that you can take your tablet, put it in the adapter that I put into that we bought, and load Google Maps and turn on your Bluetooth, and there you go.
Except no, I can't. It hasn't. Well, I would have to turn on use my phone as a hotspot. I mean, like, this feels
It's
like
already built into
400.
your phone. We're already paying for it.
I know, but my God, tin can and a string.
See, and this is the difference between the two of us. Baby and me get along just fine. She doesn't tell me where to turn. She does give me a little grunting when I'm like, no, we're going up this gravel road. But it's fine. She doesn't talk to me. I don't talk to her except it's through the steering wheel and the gas pedal.
Yeah.
The only thing that I needed was literally, when I went back to 2008, the only thing I needed was the backup camera.
Yes. Well, you've needed that since, like, birth. No,
I've needed that since my nursing career ended.
Oh, honey, you are dangerous in reverse, whether you're in a car or not. Like, that's just all I'm gonna say. Because you, like, back up in the house, and you run over everything. Like, you walk over the dog, you walk over me, like, you're running into, like, furniture. Like, reverse and you do not work.
No, because my neck doesn't turn anymore.
No. Like, you just hit the accelerator and just, like, whatever the hell's back there, it's between you and God.
I pay $113 a month to not have to worry about what I back into.
And Rebecca's here. No.
Hello, Rebecca. You know what I said. And I told her that.
What he said.
I said what I said.
But no. No, like, I'm like, for me though, honestly, and I think this is where most other people are though, is like, we started, like, technology has really helped us to offload things from our brain.
Mhm.
It is really frustrating when you get used to, I don't have to think about it.
Right.
Like, I don't have to do this. Like, that's not a side thing running in my brain.
Right.
It is really hard when you're used to that, to be like trying to yank that memory muscle back into place, to be like, oh shit, how do I get home?
Right.
Like, how do I get out of here? Like, I didn't pay attention coming in. I'm not paying attention while I'm driving. Like, I'm paying attention to the road, not thinking about, okay, well, I've got to go to this point and turn here and do
Mhm.
this. And, I'm looking for this road. Like, I'm used to having a voice next to me that says, in 500 feet, turn left.
Mhm.
In, at
Right.
quarter mile, turn right.
Mhm. And see, and that's was the hardest thing for us on trips, is because me and your car will disagree completely. She takes you the back ass ways along the longest roads, and it's like, God, we could have been here 15 minutes ago if you had just turned left at that light and made a right down the intersection.
But did it really matter? No.
Depending on if I got to stop at my coffee stop or not, because it never GPS's you by a Starbucks.
Okay, but see, here's the problem. You didn't tell me we were stopping at a coffee shop, which is a waypoint I could have dropped on that trip. Because see, it's like, this is an Aeson shortcut. Let me tell you right there. It's not shorter. It took probably, less time to go the way the car told me to go than for us to go the way he says to go, because he wants to stop at the coffee shop, go inside, flirt with the barista, get 10% off, and yeah.
Just wait till we get both cars up and go. Just wait.
Uh-huh.
We will prove this factor going to Parkersburg. We'll take both cars, and I will still arrive earlier than you do with coffee in hand.
At these gas prices, the hell we will.
They ain't
The
home.
hell we will.
Although I
Like,
do feel like
shit.
we need to start talking about some older technology and some
Mhm.
older things, like backing your car closer to your house with a gas tank close to the house, people, and putting a lock cap on it, and maybe installing some motion sensors on your car. But they went a little bit more technical in this. So you take away the news story.
What, gas thieves?
Yes.
Oh, this is, yeah, like, they did not start with the homeowner, like, they did not start in, like, the neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
No. So gas thieves in Florida accused of hacking pumps to get basically free fuel. So, Florida man. So Tampa, Florida, Florida officials arrested 4 men this week, accusing them of using a device on gas pumps that allowed them to pump fuel for pennies on the dollar. The Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services made the arrest on Wednesday. Commissioner Nikki Fried said she takes these types of crimes seriously. Anytime we're seeing a theft like this or actual fraud, we have zero tolerance, Fried said. And we're going to come in, and it's a very clear symbol to anyone that may be thinking of doing something like this. We're going to catch you. All right. So Ned Bowman, the president of the Florida Petroleum Marketers Association, said the suspects were running a pretty sophisticated operation. They go in and change the pulsator. The pulsator is the device that is inside the gas pump that regulates the flow of fuel. Bowman explained. So they're able to change the price of the fuel down to a nickel or a penny to the gallon and fill the back of their trucks up. Their bladders or spare tanks with fuel that's basically free. Bowman said the small independent gas stations could really suffer as a result of this crime. Somebody pumps gas at 5 cents a gallon or diesel fuel at 5 cents a gallon, and you're paying $4.50 or $5 a gallon for it. It hits your bottom line pretty quickly. So yeah. So we've moved past skimming, and we've moved into opening the pumps up to screw with gas prices.
Mhm. Well, and
Jesus.
the reason for that is a lot of the cars now have an anti-skimming system in them. But guys, they're starting to drill through tanks. They're cutting lines. Pay attention to your car. Pay attention to where you're parking your car.
Oh yeah, no, I was actually talking about on the pump, the like cover for the credit card slot that would skim your data.
Yeah,
So
that
yeah,
too.
I mean that's just like not that I would be upset. I mean, would anyone? Anyone at all? You
Mhm.
drive to the gas station tomorrow, you go in, you prepay, and like you prepay $50 and you fully fill your car and it comes up to like $1.
Right.
Like, are you gonna be mad? Like, are you seriously gonna be mad?
Hmm.
Like, because I'm assuming this isn't a device they just take with them. I'm assuming that like they get in there, they put it in, they pump their gas, they run off.
Right.
Like, that's what I would think. Like, I'm just saying.
I don't think so. I would be very upset and aggravated, but I also think that it's very wrong. We're dealing in a
Well,
very complicated system, and if they're scanning my data with a gas card thing, then what are they going to do with that data? I might get 3 cents a gallon. That's cute, but what's going to happen with my data afterwards? Like, there's no
well,
security for that.
but these are two separate issues.
Hmm.
One is the credit card skimmer. One is the pulsator, which what it sounds like is either a pulsator adjustment or a pulsator replacement.
Hmm.
Either which way, I don't think this immediately just reverts back.
Right.
Or well, on the pulsator, the attachment of a credit card skimmer
Right.
would be a whole separate criminal act.
Right.
But it would be very possible if you have a gas station that you've been able to pull off a skimmer at,
Hmm.
you might very well try this as well.
Right.
Because if you've been able to get past one, odds are kind of high that's a gas station with kind of lax security.
Right.
And when we're talking about our small local gas stations, which technically most of them are,
Right.
like it's weird. Even the franchise, like the franchises, like your BPs, your Little Generals, your whatever, most of those are independently owned.
Right.
Like it's the weirdo thing in gas stations is these aren't corporate locations normally. Like
Right.
Sheets is a little different.
Right.
I don't think they franchise, or do they?
No, they don't franchise. All right, so I'm going to let you cover this next story about Microsoft hindering because this is one we're facing.
Well, I think a lot of people are going to end up having issues. So yeah, Microsoft is hindering Windows 11 on custom built PCs. So this comes from Jacob Broach with Digital Trends, and he states, I had an issue with my PC over the weekend. At some point, I noticed a bit of text in the bottom right corner of my monitor that said, system requirements not met, go to settings to learn more. Deep in raids in Destiny 2, I ignored the message, assuming it was related to Wallpaper Engine or one of the dozens other apps running in the background on my PC at any given time. On Monday morning, I found out that this message comes from Microsoft on PCs running an unsupported Windows 11 install. But that's the problem. My PC supports Windows 11. Microsoft is hindering custom PCs with Windows 11, not only with an incessant insistence that builders carefully study Windows 11 system requirements, but also from a lack of guidance on how custom PCs can use the new operating system. So, yeah, he goes on to say there's a bit of a history here with some cliff notes. Microsoft announced Windows 11. Custom PC builders were sent into a panic when Microsoft's PC Health Check app said their machines wouldn't be supported. They were, but Microsoft didn't clarify that. The main issue came down to the Trusted Platform module, which was normally disabled on off-the-shelf motherboards. Microsoft responded with more guidance on the system requirements, and it looked like everything was peachy. But in February, we learned that Microsoft was testing a watermark for unsupported Windows 11 installs. Now that watermark is here, including on my supported PC. The issue once again comes down to TPM. Motherboard vendors have updated their boards to ship with TPM enabled, but Microsoft is ignoring the large swath of custom supported PCs that don't have TPM turned on. And like a vicious cycle, Microsoft is back to telling users their machines aren't supported without offering an ounce of guidance. Oi.
So what's this mean?
In short, if you have a custom PC, it may not be the biggest problem in the world, technically. It's fundamentally that right now it's limited to Windows Insider builds, so most likely most users in the wild are not going to see this, at least not yet. It is annoying, and hopefully Microsoft will get around to explaining how to fix that. So yeah, unfortunately, Windows 11 with this problem will only allow you to downgrade to Windows for 10 days. And well, once you go to Windows 11, you can only downgrade for 10 days to Windows 10. But fundamentally, it's looking like a lot of the solution is to do a clean install
Of Windows 11?
of Windows 11.
Every 10 days?
No, not every 10 days. To resolve the issue, at least temporarily, until Microsoft can figure out what the hell they're doing.
Yeah.
So as in, you can either deal with the watermark because it doesn't look like Microsoft is shutting systems down. It's just displaying the little watermark image that, on the screen, which is annoying, especially when you know your machine can support Windows 11. So right now, it's not that it's killing systems. It looks like they're going nag screen.
All right.
At least for the moment.
All right.
So yeah.
See,
really flipping annoying.
Very annoying, because we thought that, now, will this affect our laptops? Because originally we didn't think they would upgrade, and now they upgrade.
Honestly, I don't think this is going to be a problem for most users. Again, right now, this is just the insider channel. That is where Microsoft drops release candidates. As in, these are not actual releases of versions of Windows. These are basically previews of what the next version, the next update, the next etc. are going to look like or could look like. Now, Microsoft does tend to, listen to their insider community, at least a little. And if they're getting a large blowback on a situation, more often than not, they may go ahead and strip that out. Again, this is it's not betaware exactly, like it's well past beta. But some of these features are like, do we really want to do that? So they'll kind of float them through the insider channel, which is an early release of what may be released to the general public. They also do this to find out, if there's any issues, anything they missed, anything they broke. So to some degree, yes, people in the insider channel are beta testing. But these are not like beta levels of programming. These are pretty much fully fleshed. It's just some of the ideas involved may still be like not. It's more so like this is the experimental. Like, we're thinking about doing this. Let's see how it floats through the insider channel. And if a bunch of people blow back on it and they're like, whoa, that was horrible. Or this is, you broke every single machine with, a certain graphics card or, whatever. Then generally Microsoft goes, okay, well, we screwed up. That's not going out. But yeah, every once in a while you do see things that come through like this, that when it does start getting blowback, Microsoft goes, that was a bad idea.
again, what is the whole purpose of this piece? Because this is the thing I've been trying to ascertain. Because Lord knows we're going to have to, like, I don't know. I think I may have to call my contact in China, have him go down to the factory itself, pick up this piece, and ship it to me by carrier pigeon.
Yeah, the trusted platform module is effectively it's an encryption key. There's a couple of different versions of this. It's supposed to help ensure security and stability of your system. That it's using this information to validate like a legitimate install of Windows, that this is, the correct setup for your system, and prevents other issues from occurring. So it kind of locks everything down a little bit.
Right.
Microsoft has been hard pushing on this one.
Right.
Because it does help to stop some issues.
Right.
There's a whole other camp that argues, yeah, but like it's not that great.
Right.
I don't think Microsoft's trying to claim it's the greatest thing ever, but it's one more knife one more tool in the toolbox.
Right.
One more knife in the drawer. To kind of prevent easier
Right.
problems with systems.
Right.
So what the TPM is effectively doing is trying to ensure that everything checks out on your system, so that it's harder to sit there and screw around with the system, like the actual operating system of the computer, and introduce problems there.
Right.
Which often those would be related to viruses, malware, and programs you don't intend to install that makes changes to system files.
Right.
Effectively, the minute it tries to do it, this is going to blow it up.
Right.
Like, it's going to be sitting there going, this is broken.
Right.
Like, no, 6 months down the road and you've got 40,000 tabs open and there's some naked woman dancing on your screen telling you to click here. No. It's not going to get there. It's going to be very quickly that, like, it tries, it fails, you're immediately alerted your system has a problem, please fix it. So from an IT standard, I kind of appreciate that. I see what they're trying to do. I think they've gone about it a little funky. I think they're trying to push a lot of users that aren't ready to be there, to there, in a like kind of a yell fire in a crowded theater sort of way.
Right.
As in they're pushing this. They're not really giving people a chance to make a decision on it. And then there's manufacturers that are also kind of balking at some of the Windows 11 requirements and going, yeah, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
So it like Windows 11 may be one of the forgotten editions, is what I'm kind of thinking.
Okay.
For some, like, I don't know. There may be an initial push to it, which there has been. That's slowing rapidly. I don't know enterprise-wise if we're gonna get there on Windows 11. Like, I just don't. I think there's gonna be a fair number of companies that go, we're just gonna wait.
Right.
Like, no, we're not replacing our entire lineup, our entire asset pool of PCs that we potentially just bought,
right,
because of Windows 11.
Right.
Like, it's not doing enough for corporate to inherently justify it, which isn't exactly true.
Right.
It is definitely one of those features that if you're trying to avoid things like ransomware, etc., Windows 11 should be better at that.
Right.
Which, looking at the problems that ransomware can cause, most enterprises, talking about 500 plus users, really should be more interested in Windows 11
Right.
and getting there, because the more you can do to secure these systems, at the most basic levels, the less problems you're going to have long term.
Right.
Because it is a double-edged sword, like 500, 1,000, 5,000 new computers, potentially, depending upon the size of your business and how many are not, don't meet these requirements. Yeah, it's a huge undertaking financially. So's cleaning up ransomware,
Right.
which can spread like wildfire through your corporation.
Right.
Again, all of this, it's not a guarantee you won't. Like, you could spend all this money, replace all those computers, you
Right.
still end up with ransomware.
Right.
It can happen. Like, none of this is a guarantee.
Right.
But it is supposed to help make these kinds of things, like all of the features of Windows 11 and security, are supposed to make all these things harder to do.
Right.
So I can see it from both perspectives. Like, it when we're talking post, the panini, that we've just gone through in the major push that a lot of companies went through to buy new systems, deploy new systems for work at home, and the massive hit that web-based communication has put on companies.
Right.
Buying cameras, buying audio equipment, making sure that they have licenses for Zoom, and the IT budget's already taken a hit over the last few years. And again, companies are having issues. Some are, with, absorbing those costs already to then have Microsoft turn around.
Right.
I think Windows 11 may go down as the all of this leads me to. I think Windows 11 may, for the enterprise at least, go down as the version of Windows that was just too much too soon.
Right.
Like bad timing all around, which we know Microsoft has. Like, God knows they're trying yet again on a phone.
Right.
Like, bless your heart, Microsoft. You've gotten your ass handed to you so many times on a phone. Why would you try again? But okay, one more go. So yeah. Hey, Mary, and cool, you have a colleague with you. Very awesome, very awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, but no, I just it really is a lot for the home user. It's a lot, like, it's a beautiful version of Windows, I will say that.
Right.
Like, it's very, like, they finally visually did something nice.
Yeah.
Outside of that, and it is a little more logical in the back end functionalities. Like, finding the things that you need is a lot more logical than it has been in previous versions of Windows, and it's starting to make more cohesion, more sense, in the way they're showing you these things. All that said, it's pretty, it's nice, it's doing some cool things. Do I suggest that if you're getting your Windows, your computer's not supported, to upgrade, that you should run out immediately and buy a new PC? No.
I'm still waiting on the new PCs. All right, so the more concerning thing is coming from the FBI. Yes, guys, we know this is a lot of tech information, but there's a lot of tech stuff going on.
I know, it's been a very tech-laden
week.
Like, couple of weeks. Yeah.
It's concerned about a Russian cyber attack on critical infrastructures. Okay, what's the average user need to be worried about here, Joe?
Well, fundamentally, if you want to know what the average person's going to go through with cyber attacks, potentially what we would be looking at is critical infrastructure attacks and utility-based attacks. Those are, your banking and your critical infrastructure are going to be your two biggest ones.
Right.
So with those, you could potentially have issues with payment systems, with payment networks,
Mm-hmm.
with, targeted major banks.
Right.
So if you're a Wells Fargo customer, a Chase customer, like big banks,
Right.
the big national names, Bank of America, BB&T, or Truist, as they now want to call themselves. But you could have issues there. If you're looking at the infrastructure side, you're also going to be looking at like major utility providers. And a lot of what would be happening here, like kind of breaking it up, banking is just an easy target.
Mm-hmm.
Our banking system, as much as we like to talk about technology, is actually pretty dumb.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pretty dumb system.
Right.
That is built on a lot of just go ahead and take the risk and pay for it later.
Mm-hmm.
That honestly preparing for the problem and working around problems is
Mm-hmm.
more expensive than when the problem occurs, just insurance will pay for it or the bank takes the hit.
Right.
That like things can go awry.
Right.
So rather than it's sort of the banking equivalent of our automotive industry,
Mm-hmm.
in which effectively what's happening is, do you recall all this stuff or and fix it to avoid the problems, or do you sit here and do the calculation of, well, like how many times is this going to really turn into a problem? And if we did get sued, how much are we going to get fined? And if we have to pay out, casualties and injuries, what's that really going to cost us?
Right.
Okay, and that's cheaper than fixing it. Then take the gamble.
Right. Well,
Like,
and then here's the other question on things is because they're saying that all 5 major energy companies have been scanned. What's that mean?
I'm sorry, you're saying scammed or scanned?
Scanned.
Okay, so as far as energy companies, what, and again, these are majors. What you're dealing with there is looking for vulnerabilities in those systems and what could be exploited.
Right.
Unfortunately, the problem with talking about cybersecurity is you don't know what an attacker is going to do until they do it.
Mm-hmm.
You can look for routes of attack that have happened before and methodologies that attackers will use.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
But fundamentally, what you end up with is it's very much like antivirus software.
Mm-hmm.
Really good at taking care of things we already know exist.
Mm-hmm.
Really fucking sucks at taking care of problems that are new.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's where build a better mousetrap, build a better mouse. It's a constant, never-ending, tail chase.
Right.
Is the best we can do is look at known issues and known methods,
Mm-hmm.
and methodologies of approach towards the system to compromise it, and say, okay, well, according to all these,
Right.
the systems are secure, or here's what they need to do to fix it, and they are working
Right.
towards that. It is fundamentally where everyone's going to end up. That's the best you ever have with cybersecurity.
Right.
Part 1, which is, are you vulnerable?
Right.
Part 2 is always going to be, okay, but that's cute and all.
Right.
What do you have in terms of how do you deal with this when it happens?
Right.
Like when someone figures out how to compromise the system,
Mm-hmm.
what do you have on the back end to help stem that tide?
Right.
And that's where it does always get interesting with cybersecurity, is that requires a deployment of people and equipment,
Mm-hmm.
to get those systems back up, to get them reconnected, to get them cleaned out, to get this secured and ensure it doesn't happen again. As well as what kind of monitoring are you doing in the interim, so that if someone does attack your system, that you're not, turning off all the power, that you're not suddenly depleting massive amounts of resources for a demand that doesn't exist.
Right. Now, do you think Putin wants in my email? Is that what he's trying?
Generally speaking, no. I mean, it depends upon how you want to look at it. Like, cyber attacking can come down to a few different forms. Sometimes it's very much intended to cause harm and cause issues. It's big, it's splashy. You say something like California has no power. That's a really big, scary news headline. We've seen that with rolling blackouts and things like that in the past that were, like the Enron, that whole situation.
Right.
And which turned out to be a whole scam by Enron.
Right.
To drive up the cost of providing power.
Right.
But when you start having situations like that, it is very scary and disorienting for people that, no, you can't depend that when you flip the light switch, the lights will be on.
Right.
No, you can't, do this. You can't do that. This is going to be closed. This is going to be, you're going to be hot and you're going to be uncomfortable and you're going to be cold and on and on and on. It can be very disrupting. Those are generally considered big and splashy. Now, if you want to talk about things that not as big and splashy, not really going to result in like your credit card number has been used to buy a thing online, not really what's going to happen. But if you want to talk about disorienting and destabilizing, a massive hack on, say, Google's Gmail.
Right.
That exposes all data.
Yes.
That would be very destabilizing and disorienting for people.
Right.
That would make a lot of people uncomfortable. If you're talking about, going after Apple and iCloud, that's very destabilizing and disorienting and creates a lot of problems for those companies with users now feeling like their data is very, very, very vulnerable.
Right.
Depends upon which way you want to go.
Right.
Screwing with, utilities, does put people at risk, imminent physical risk. That can in some ways be used as leverage. Making people paranoid, afraid to use, like, say, Apple or Google or, whatever they go after.
Right.
Again, very disorienting, not really as immediate risk.
Right.
And may never actually pose as like substantial risk. Exactly. As much as you've now created, this segment of the population that has no faith in your product and services or your ability as a country or as a company, even to protect itself from these outside forces.
Right.
So that takes some major brand hits. And when we're talking about companies pulling out of Russia, companies moving away from Russia, honestly, I think that in all the likelihoods, we are probably looking at a beginning somewhere around major services like Google, and just because it's where's your pound for the punch?
Right.
You go after a public utility. It is disorienting. It is, very harmful, but it does create a lot of anger towards the attacking body. Versus, you're like, all of our email accounts at Google get compromised. Even if no one ever does anything that causes harm with that, that's a major blow to American capitalism. You're going to see stock markets and, shares in those companies starting to devaluate. You're going to see a lot of people very upset that, their data was exposed. You're going to, sit there and watch Google have to do a mea culpa of we're so sorry. This is what we're doing, to a lot of people that are not necessarily technically literate enough to understand what Google's saying, other than we got hacked. We're sorry. We'll fix it. We'll try to make sure that never happens again. And then, especially if there's a pile-on like 2 months later, you start to really chip away at a company's reputation.
Right.
Given that, we've sat here and had companies pulling out of Russia right now, I would be more willing to say that's going to be the target, is chipping away at American capitalism and, trying to embarrass more than actually harm. But embarrass these major companies that have left. I keep using Google as an example. It's a really big one. It's one that's really easy to pick on. And, we were just talking about them a little bit ago and having issues with Google Maps. Was that related? I don't know. Probably not. All right. But fundamentally, that would be the kind of disruption and issues that we would be talking about with a cyber attack, would be my take on it.
Right.
Is that we're going to be looking more at embarrassing major corporations than actually trying to shut off water and power and, all these things to, very specific parts of the country, go after the big fish that are global, that are really going to take the hit in terms of, because again, Russia has a very, sort of communist message behind them, the value of the state and state control, versus, looking at democracies and the way that, free information, that's kind of my take on it, is go take them out at the knees.
Right.
So that would, I mean, I don't think any of the information is going to be used. I think it's just going to be exposed.
Right. Again, I don't think that this is anything for us to generally work, but it is something about the infrastructure, because we already know the infrastructure is weak in Texas. Like, that was proven from the storm.
Well, our whole country's infrastructure is weak.
Right.
I mean, like, West Virginia's just been sitting here and bitching about it for 20 some years or more.
Right.
Between, like, we have a weak cable infrastructure. We have a weak telephone infrastructure. We have a weak road infrastructure. We have a weak, you name it, it's weak.
Right.
The U.S. has very much been heavily engaged in profiteering off our utilities and utility-like services such as phone and internet, because not all these have been declared utilities yet or have hit that full category. But a lot of companies are profiteering off of them while not necessarily maintaining those. Again, we've seen that with Suddenlink in West Virginia, with Frontier in West Virginia, American Water, Appalachian Power. Like, all of our utilities are fucked.
Right.
As in, if you're in a large metro, you have decent services and, potentially newer, lines and services and piping and etc. If you're not, you may be sitting there with, 100-year-old telephone lines and, 100-year-old water lines and, 50-year-old cable lines and all these things. I've got to pull this headset. I'm battery lowing.
Okay.
So with all that,
right,
it's not like our infrastructure is in a good position to be attacked, because it's not just the lines and the pipes and all that. A lot of the controlling computer systems are very antiquated, unmaintained, and, sometimes at best second, third, fourth hand from other, major areas.
All right. So does it make us less vulnerable?
Actually, no, it does tend to make us more vulnerable.
Okay.
Um, for some of these systems, it may, the fact that we're getting stuff that's been passed through so many different, other systems,
Mm-hmm.
some of these could be so antiquated
Uh-huh.
that no, they don't connect to the internet. There's no there's no way to do that. But it can also inadvertently be its own worst enemy there if someone has forced it onto the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Because virtually anything that is digital can be put online
Right.
with enough ingenuity, time, and effort.
Right.
But when we're not talking about normal, like to some degree, and that's not exactly what happens, but if you can't if it's not running modern like software,
Mm-hmm.
if we're talking about really old DOS based systems and really old Unix based systems that just they're not maintained, no one makes parts for that anymore, no one's updating that software with security. Hell, it was never supposed to go online.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we don't know how you made it go online, but we ain't part of that.
Right.
Like, no, that was never supposed to occur. We didn't design for that.
Uh-huh.
Like, that was 10 years after we created that system.
Right.
You can have a lot of issues. But if you're looking at more modern systems, like if you're living, I would say more than likely, not a guarantee, but if you're talking about major metropolitan areas,
Mm-hmm.
Los Angeles, DC, New York, Orlando, like Houston, well, Houston's a bad example.
Right.
But if you're talking about more major metropolitan areas, on some points, they will have more modern equipment
Right.
to service those larger areas.
Right.
So if you're talking about New York City, yeah, if you're working with Altus, Suddenlink, whatever the hell they're calling themselves this month, as your internet service provider, then yeah, you're probably getting some primo equipment in New York
Right.
City. And that equipment is going to be running on modern hardware under modern operating systems, receiving security updates that are intended to be used online.
Right.
When you're talking about a lot of these older systems, like this is duct tape spent in a prayer
Mm-hmm.
that has an internet connection.
Right.
Yeah. That's always concerning because you're kind of stuck at, okay, so who the hell made this shit work? One, were they ever thinking that, like one day, someone's going to try to take it out?
Right.
Or was it built just to help make someone's life easier so they
Right.
could reduce some employees and someone up, 50 miles away on the other side of the county could, turn on a Windows 95 machine and press a button and, dump some more chlorine into the water supply?
Right.
You know, it all depends.
It all depends. All right. So your all of the asshole is in your private chat.
Oh, there we go.
We decided to go international with this one, guys.
Oh, we went international? What?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. All right. So let's grab that and bring it over. Am I the asshole? Ordered KFC 10 kilometers away from my home. The delivery guy messaged to me that I am an inconsiderate guy. I just had a bad day and I really want to sleep, but my mother insisted for me to order some KFC. I just type in KFC in Food Panda, a local food delivery service, and just order from what KFC I see first in the search results. I didn't check the distance between my house and the KFC since I really want to sleep. 45 minutes later, the rider or the driver arrived at my door. He seems very quiet and very angry, but I am so sleepy, I just take the food and pay the guy. Then I just walk to my bedroom and continue to sleep. Later, I found out that guy messaged me that I am an inconsiderate guy and my order made his day worse. I checked the order and it was 10 kilometers away from my home. I felt really sorry for the guy. Am I the asshole here? Edit. He rode a motorcycle.
By the way, for our American listeners and those in the mile provision, that's only 6 miles.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it all depends upon what 6 miles.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know what I mean? Like 6 miles in New York, like, fuck you, dude.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, or the equivalent in another country.
Right.
Like, if you're talking about 6 miles in New York, like, Jesus Christ.
Right.
That was your 45 minutes right there.
Right.
Like, oh my God, do you want to try to do do you want to try to get down like a main thoroughfare in the middle of New York City?
Right.
Even if it's only 6 miles, like that's fucking forever.
Right.
Like that's horrible. If you're talking about 6 miles in, like Charleston,
Right.
Dude, get over it.
Yeah.
Like that's nothing. Even at like raining on a motorcycle, that would be nothing.
Right.
New York, that's a bitch.
Right. But, here's my viewpoint. I've talked to a few drivers, and there's some drivers here that won't take certain deliveries because they're too far.
Yeah.
And we're not talking 6 miles, we're talking 26 miles round trip.
Yeah. Yeah.
So who's the asshole? The delivery guy that accepted it or the guy that ordered it?
I'm going to go with the delivery guy on this one.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Me too.
at least without the additional information.
Okay.
Like, that would be the special case in which it's like, no, that was inconsiderate as fuck.
Okay.
Like, if you're in New York or, like, Montreal, some huge major metro.
Right.
And we're talking about 6 miles there? Oh, yeah, that fucking sucked.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that was 45 minutes one way. That dude's got to drive 45 minutes back. You just took up a quarter of his potential shift just getting your order. I don't care how much you tipped. That's just rude. But again, if we're talking about somewhere like here, we're 6 miles, screw that. You can be done in 10 minutes.
Right.
Like, that's not really a big deal.
All right. I went a little step further and checked out this OP. He rode a motorcycle. He ordered from the city center, so maybe that's a lot of traffic, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, so it looks like Food Panda is based in Singapore.
Mm-hmm.
The entire main island is maybe 50 kilometers across.
Mm-hmm.
And then this poster goes on to say, having friends from there, I can tell you their perception of distance is quite different from, say, Americans, where a smaller town is bigger than the entire nation.
Right.
This guy probably did ride a motorbike to make the delivery, but the app should have limited distance if it was out of the delivery range. I can fairly say I'm kind of gonna go with the driver's the asshole.
Yeah.
Like,
none of that, but it was like 42, and he tipped him a 50.
That's still a decent tip.
Yeah.
Like, that's 18% ish.
Yeah.
It's right there at 18% anyway.
Right.
I mean, it's not an unreasonable tip. I get that my perception or our perception of distance is probably, skewing that a little bit. It's not horrible.
Right.
It's not horrible. Like, I think it's more than forgivable.
Right.
I mean, it's not quite the same as, like, we live in Oak Hill. That is roughly an hour from Princeton. If we screw up and this could happen.
Yeah.
Like, if we screwed up in one of our apps and some poor, unfortunate delivery driver drove all the way from Princeton to Oak Hill, oh my God, the tip we would have to leave to feel better about ourselves.
Well, but when I'm looking at, I'm kind of like looking at some of the restaurants we commonly order from. on average, they drive that for us.
Potentially. Like, are you talking round trip or just one way?
Round trip.
Well, yeah, but I guess that's also my question is, was 6 miles one way or round trip? Because I wasn't quite catching.
Round trip.
Oh, then no, shut up.
Yeah.
Like, if 6 miles is the whole round trip, like, dude, shut up. Like, again, I don't care that it's a motorbike. Like, get over it. Hey, Ashley. No.
Yeah. All right. If we order from 110, that
Mhm.
lovely restaurant that has my sandwiches.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're driving that. And
Yeah.
they normally get an average tip.
And I think generally for most places, I think 15 to 20 miles is usually your max.
Yep.
For any restaurant to deliver to you.
Yep.
Don't know about Singapore culture, whether it's common that a restaurant would refuse or like call someone up and be like, no, that ain't happening, dude. Thanks. Sorry. Don't know
Right.
why the website lets you do it. We're not.
It's like if we wanted to order for Angela's, I don't think they would deliver. Or Papa John's, they won't deliver.
No, probably not.
Yeah.
No. That's, I mean, we could try it.
Yeah. We have.
I will say, a former friend of mine's mom, actually, she ate so much Chinese food. Like, it was probably a good, 40-minute delivery trip from her favorite restaurant.
Right.
To her house and back for this poor delivery driver. But one, she ordered so much food, like as in so frequently, and tipped so well that you call that restaurant as anyone else, and start giving that giving an address near her. They're going to be like, no,
right,
that's out of our delivery area. She called and they're like, we will be there in 30 minutes.
Right. Ashley says DoorDash doesn't deliver past 5 miles. I disagree. Maybe North Carolina doesn't deliver past 5 miles. Here it does. Because 5 miles don't even get them out of their normal metro area.
Well, again, that's kind of going back to what I was saying, though, is when you're talking about major metros, that really skews that whole concept. No, I'm not outside of I would maybe consider 5 miles in Greensboro,
right,
Raleigh, North Carolina, maybe. But if you get out to Hall River, I'm sure that delivery driver will probably go up to about 15 or 20 without batting an eyelash.
Right.
Won't even register, just be another day at work.
Right.
Because they can do it. It's reasonable. You can get, back and forth in 30 minutes. And potentially have multiple orders to deliver, within an hour.
Right.
In a circuit.
Right.
Versus 45 minutes across a 5 mile span.
Right.
Oh no, screw that.
Right.
You can't pay a delivery driver to do 5 orders and go home.
Right. Well, and see, this is the thing that I'm questioning and have been questioning for a while now. Is this our new culture?
True. Well, and Ashley brings up a point. Given gas prices right now, maybe before?
Yeah. Well, DoorDash has been doing something really nice for their drivers. They're giving, if you let them, if you use their credit card, they give you 5% back. If you drive over 100 miles, you get a bonus of some sort. Much different than we've seen with Uber and Lyft.
Right. Absolutely. And those are definitely, advantages and things that, do help to offset. But I'm not saying Ashley has an invalid point. I mean, hell, we've gone through this with Logisticare and your mom and my family.
Right.
I have family members that if I don't drive them to their doctor's appointments, they can't get there.
Right.
because we have this lovely system and it's in a lot of states. It's called logistic care, now known as motive care. It's this idea that you can either A, reimburse a family member.
Right.
Well, B, you can get a professional driver for a corporate entity that does medical transport.
Right.
C, you can do, you know, as in licensed medical transport.
Right.
As well. So like an ambulance pick up and drop off for people who need those, you know, additional supports.
Right.
And I believe it also covers reimbursement for cab fare if it has to go all the way to like the end of their services. The problem is most of those services, once you start bordering on 15 to 20 miles, as our various family members have found out, those appointments get canceled.
Right.
Like they will refuse to come pick you up. They'll say they can't find a driver, or we're sorry, we're unable to fulfill your request.
Right.
Like that's it. They don't make other arrangements. They don't try to do anything else.
Right.
They don't see a pattern of a problem.
Right.
They just sit there and leave you stranded. So in like West Virginia and other states, and any state doing any similar program, you start seeing that what these drivers have done, what these companies have done even, is go, it's not fucking worth it. We're not like pulling one of our vehicles and people out of service to drive you, 60 miles to a doctor's appointment, wait for an hour or more, and drive back. The reimbursement we get for that, not worth it. Not worth it. Doesn't cover it.
Right.
Doesn't even begin to cover it.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, guys. It's been a really good show. We've covered a lot. This is a lot of information. Make sure to like us, subscribe us, like us. Be looking for some new things coming up from me. We've been working on some big projects, not only for our baristas, but also for, the general population. Be looking for some new programs coming out from me. And be looking for us Friday night, because we're going to be covering a lot more topics, a lot more stuff. We've got a possible new justice coming in to the Supreme Court. We've got a lot of other things to be talking about, and a lot of other things to be going on, both in and out of West Virginia, that affect all people. Although we will be focusing on the LGBT issues mainly there, because, sorry, our rights are always up for debate.
There we go. So, and then Ashley wanted to know, Monday is coffee chat, right?
Wednesday is coffee chat.
Wednesday is coffee chat. There you go. All right. And of course,
coffee
we want
chat
to thank...
will be on Wednesday the 30th.
There we go. So we do want to thank Beverly Walker, Mika G, Kathy, Mary Winfield, Brenda Bryant, Ashley Gish, Shannon C, Shannon D, the ever wonderful Lady Gwendolyn, Charles Shaw, and Dottie the Psychic. If you'd like to learn more about us, the show, or how you too can become one of our baristas through joining our Patreon and supporting the show, please visit PCSPnetwork.com.
Yes. And we will see you next We will see you next Friday.
We'll see you Friday.
Yes.
The one coming up.
Yes.
All right.
All right, guys. Bye, y'all.
Stacked. You can whisper behind my back. You can show me how the odds are up against me all day long. But I've been through the fire and come out alive, and there's no more fear in my eyes. Oh, now I'm rising, and you can't bring me down. You can't stop me now.